Welcome to First Things First. Jenna Wolfe is off today. I'm Kevin Wildes alongside Chris Broussard and Nick Wright. We start this morning with sad news. John Madden has passed away at the age of 85. He was a champion, a teacher, a Hall of Famer, and a football icon who educated and entertained millions through decades in the broadcast booth and the video game that shares his name. Last night, Commissioner Goodell said this in a statement. Nobody loved football more than Coach. He was football. He was an incredible sounding board to me and so many others. There will never be another John Madden, and we will forever be indebted to him for all he did to make football in the NFL what it is today. Nick, how will you remember the life of John Madden?
I think you can make a very strong argument that John Madden is more responsible for the growth and popularity of football than any other single human being of his lifetime. That John Madden, from every step of his career, he found a way to grow the game even bigger. It obviously started with coaching the Raiders, and I think Broussard's going to get into that, in further terms because that predates me. But the resume speaks for itself. An unbelievable winning percentage, won 75% of his games, obviously won a Super Bowl, never had the losing record for an iconic franchise. Then the broadcasting career, where it wasn't just, I think he won 16 Emmys. He called Super Bowls on all 4 of the networks, which will never be done again by anybody. But he is, to me, unquestionably, the greatest color commentator in the history of American sports for any sport, because he found a way to have his infectious love of football transcend the screen. And football is a complicated, complex game. And he could explain complex topics in such basic, accessible language with such enthusiasm that for me, him on Fox, because I'm a little young to really remember him on CBS, him on Fox with Pat Summerall was the soundtrack of me learning football, of me learning what a zone blitz was, of me understanding why you can't run against this front. And he did it with booms and bangs and pows. And then, and this is the part, and I know this is going to sound silly, and I hope the audience doesn't laugh at me, but the Madden video game franchise, Broussard, is one of the things that isn't alive that I hold dearest to my heart. Like if you remove like family and friends and pets, if you do things like items in the world that have meant the most to me over 25 years, it's Madden. Madden is where I learned clock management. Madden is where I tricked myself into thinking I could be a GM. Madden is where I really became a football guy year round. And so I don't think it's possible, Broussard, to overstate his impact on the game that has become America's most popular sport by a mile. And so, a 3-time over Hall of Famer in my book.
No, right. It isn't possible to overstate it, Nick. And as you said, you and those younger than you, maybe you remember him most for the Madden video games. Wildes, maybe you remember him most as a broadcaster, and I often joke about being the elder statesman on this show, but I am. And my first recollections of John Madden were as a head coach. And a lot of people don't even remember him as a head coach. But I was a little boy in the 70s when he was coaching the Oakland Raiders, but football was by far my favorite sport. And I was a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I was as big of a Steelers fan as Nick is a Chiefs fan today. And the team that I feared the most as a young guy who lived and died with every Steelers victory or loss, the team I feared the most was John Madden's Oakland Raiders. For all the Hall of Fame players he had, Fred Biletnikoff, Ted Hendricks, Cliff Branch, not a Hall of Famer, but Ken Stabler, Dave Casper, Jack Tatum, Gene Upshaw. For all of the great players he coached and more, John Madden was as much a face of that team as any of his fantastic players. And they met the Steelers 5 straight years in the playoffs, beat them twice, including 1976, when he had probably the greatest team in Raiders franchise history. They went 13-1 and destroyed Minnesota in the Super Bowl for his only Super Bowl win. But Madden coached 10 years, made the playoffs 8 years, made the conference championship 7 years, won that Super Bowl, and left the game. And still to this day, Nick, among coaches in NFL history who have 100 or more victories, Madden is the winningest of them all. His winning percentage, 75.9. For comparison's sake, Vince Lombardi, 73.8. Bill Belichick, 67.1. So Madden was a phenomenal coach. Now, he did become the voice of football for me, along with Pat Summerall as a broadcaster. But we should never forget how great of a coach he was. He's in the Hall of Fame. Like you said, Nick, he could be in there for a number of things, but he is in there as a head coach, Wilds, and that should not ever be forgotten, how good he was on the sidelines.
Yeah, you nailed it, Broussard. Well done. And I want to talk about Madden as the broadcaster. And there's an idea around in late night television that everything can be traced back to Johnny Carson in some way. And that's true, but there's only a handful of people doing late night television. There are thousands of people doing play-by-play and color commentating, and they can all be seen, have a little bit of Madden's creative DNA. And at the top of the mountaintop of broadcasting, you see Barkley's kind of raw likability. It's a little bit like Madden. When you see Tony Romo breaking down plays, a little bit like Madden. When you hear Mike Breen in basketball yell bang, bang, that's just like Madden yelling boom. So when you watch a game, it doesn't even have to be football. You can see John Madden. And the other part of broadcasting is this. There is an idea, and an old TV executive told me this. It's like, at its core, Nick, if you want to be good at broadcasting, you're in people's living room, and people want to spend time with you. That's the main fundamental reason that you're going to work as a broadcaster. Not because you're necessarily the most interesting or the most good-looking. People want to spend time with you. And John Madden epitomized that, to the point where I felt like John Madden was a member of my family. And I couldn't figure it out. When I saw this news, I was sad. I was extra sad. I felt like I lost a family member. And Nick, I realized, because all throughout my childhood, Thanksgiving was spent with my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, and John Madden. John Madden was the likable, lovable, funny, smart uncle that I would see on Thanksgiving that I never met. So he will be missed. He's a true icon, and I feel like I lost a family member.
No, and icon and legendary are words we throw around maybe a little too loosely. But on a day like today, you almost wish, we were the German language, where we had even stronger words, something above legendary, above icon, because that's what Madden's transcended to in so many different areas. Broussard laid out the coaching resume beautifully. A 75 win percentage means his average season would have been 12-4 under a 16-game schedule. He made the conference championship game 70% of the time. It's impossible. Finding a way to work for all 4 networks, call Super Bowls for all 4 networks, at one point be higher paid than any player in the NFL, that is not going to be done again. Like, I guarantee you that. And I'm going to circle back to the video game. And I know it sounds maybe a little silly on this day, but I hope people, and the timing of this is either perfect or incredibly bittersweet, with Fox's brilliant Madden doc that debuted on Christmas and is airing again tonight on Big Fox, and it's going to be airing on FS1 throughout evenings, the week moving forward. But part of his story, Wilds, is the Thanksgiving, is guys being excited about the turducken, and are they going to be on the All Madden team?
Yeah.
But when you listen to Mike Vick and other guys talk about how important that game was and how their ratings mattered on that game and how they came up playing that game, and I think you can draw a direct line with the people, my generation, so I'm in my mid-30s, who are now on television, who is the generation of people who are hardest on coaches for game management mistakes to our history growing up playing Madden. How many times have you heard me say on this
100%.
show, when we're talking about a coach butchering the clock, be like, hey, a kid who plays Madden knows how to do this. And I'm not being facetious. Like, that's where I learned it. Is you can't, if you're not able to play football, at the professional or collegiate level or coach it, the closest you could come is, running your Madden franchise or playing Madden against friends in college in a big game and understanding, oh, I got to use my timeouts. Oh, I should go for this 4th down. And I truly believe when we're watching, Brandon Staley make some of these decisions, there is a part of him that is still pulling back to the 12-year-old that was on PlayStation that was like, oh, man, this is a go-for-it spot. And I think that part will live forever. So much of him will live forever. And obviously, it's a sad day, but it's also a day of celebration, Watts.
That's well said. Before we go, Fox Sports CEO and executive producer Eric Shanks shared this message. We are heartbroken by the passing of our great friend, colleague, and cornerstone, John Madden. On behalf of the entire Fox Sports family, past, present, and future, we will forever be a part of John's team. We are all better for having known him, one of the greatest coaches and broadcasters of all time. John is an icon who will live on forever in our hearts and memories. Our thoughts and prayers are with Virginia, Mike, Joe, and the entire Madden family. Welcome back to First Things First. Lakers snapped their 5-game losing streak by beating the red-hot Rockets and playing LeBron at center for the first time in his career. How'd it go? 13, 11, and 11. Over his last 5 games, LeBron's averaging 34, 10, and 6. They've also won one of those games. Nick, some people thought, beat the Rockets, no big deal, but you did think it was interesting. Why?
Subtle jab.
Yeah, because sometimes we miss the forest for the trees. The story surrounding the Lakers that is sucking up all the oxygen is one that matters in the moment, but really does not matter historically at all, which is the Lakers have struggled through the first 35 games of this odd NBA season. That's the story we've been hammering. Russ is not working. AD is injured. Did LeBron pick the wrong players? But the story that will stand the test of time, and we were reminded of it last night, as LeBron went 32, 11, and 11, to now lead the NBA in 30-point games, despite missing a dozen games, is the fact that LeBron James is having not just an unprecedented year 19 turns 37 tomorrow season, but somehow one of the best seasons of his career. Broussard, he's averaging the most points he's averaged since 2009, his last year with the Cavs. As of this morning, the full list of players averaging more points than LeBron this year: Kevin Durant and Steph Curry by a few tenths of a point. That's the list. He's doing it on 52% shooting, 35% from 3, and the free throws must be good because we don't talk about him anymore. Oh yeah, 78% from the line. Best he shot those in a decade as well. And last night, he scored his 36,000th career point. So he's obviously the youngest to do that. He's literally the youngest player for every point threshold from 550 points up to 36,000 and change where he is now. It's LeBron James across the board. And I feel like because the Lakers came in with these expectations, because the Lakers have been disappointing, because LeBron missed some time, it's like, oh, the injuries, is that going to be a problem again? We're missing the fact the guy has played 23 games, he's scored 30 in 13 of them. Again, that's the most in the league this year. So I think that's the story. I think the story is that for any of this to work with the Lakers, we needed LeBron to at least be a top 5 guy. And he's making a case he might somehow still be the best guy. And certainly is a top 3 guy still, which is impossible to believe.
Nick, everything you said, or most of what you said, is correct. LeBron is playing tremendously. That goes without saying. And, you know, you and I are on opposite ends of the GOAT debate. I've got Jordan. You've got LeBron. But one of the greatest arguments for LeBron is and will be his longevity. And it is simply unmatched. There's no question about it. For a guy to be doing what he's doing in his 19th year, at age 37, which he'll be tomorrow, is absolutely unprecedented. Now, Kareem was the go-to guy for the Lakers in his 19th year. That was his last championship. And when they played the Pistons in the finals, they went to Kareem when they needed a bucket, obviously the phantom foul call and so on and so forth.
Yep.
But he only averaged 14 points and 6 rebounds that year. So Kareem was far past his prime and not putting up anything close to the numbers he did when he was, you know, at his best. LeBron, as you said, is doing that. I would not say this is one of LeBron's better seasons, though, because LeBron, like Jordan, like Kareem, is also associated with winning. And at his best, whether his numbers were at what they are this year or not, he could control the game so much to determine winning. And we're not losing tonight. At the very least, we're going to the second round of the playoffs or the conference finals and the finals. So that's the difference. Like, statistically, yes, it's a great season, but I wouldn't stack it up with his other years because obviously on the other end, defensively, he's not close to what he used to be. But, Nick, here's where I disagree with you. I think the bigger story is still the Lakers' failures or struggles this season. And here's why. Because let's say LeBron for the next 3 years puts up very good or great individual numbers. And he'll pass Kareem, and it looks academic at this point in the scoring, the way he's putting up points. So he'll pass Kareem, and we'll celebrate it. It'll be tremendous and all that. But it won't have the impact on us as fans and viewers unless they're winning. If he puts up these numbers and they're an afterthought, they're an also ran, maybe they get to the playoffs, maybe they, win around. Like, if that's all it is, then it won't be as big of a deal because, as I said, he's associated with either winning championships or at least getting to the finals. And I'll give you one last example. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan in Washington, most people feel like that hurt his legacy. Michael Jordan averaged 20 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds in the season in which he turned 40 years old in February. So half the season, he was a 40-year-old, putting up legitimate all-star numbers that are great for all-stars throughout the league as shooting guards. And yet, we don't think about that. We don't remember. He scored 50 points a couple times that year. We don't remember because he was associated with winning. So this is great, but I still think, Nick, the bigger story is the Lakers' struggles because it'll put a damper on these great individual things that LeBron is doing if they don't win.
Yeah, I mean, we have really gone overboard for a Rockets win that was pretty close. The Rockets have won 10 games. The Lakers, Nick, have won 17. That is 3 more than the Sacramento Kings. But I'm surprised we took a turn to all-time great LeBron and Michael Jordan winning championships. Because you beat the Rockets barely. The score was decent,
it's not about,
and Russ had
it's
7
not about
turnovers.
The game.
I don't think LeBron's the issue.
It's not about beating the Rockets.
It is about the game.
That's my point, though, Wildes.
Okay.
No, Wildes.
You're talking about this season.
Hold on a second.
Right.
It is and it isn't. If we're talking about the Lakers' playoff positioning, which I'm sure when we think back upon NBA history, we're going to remember, that late December game in 2021 when the Lakers snuck up to the 7th seed. I'm, foolishly, I guess, instead focusing on the fact that a guy who, whether you guys agree with it or not, has a great case to be the greatest player ever, scored his 36,000th career point, which a little context for that. If you take Bird, plus Anthony Davis, they didn't get to 36,000. If you take Magic plus Dame, you're not to 36,000. If you take Michael plus Ja, you're not to 36,000. That night, LeBron, which, by the way, side note, hey, year 19, 63,000 minutes. Okay, well, yeah, I had to pick somebody. Ja's pretty good.
Michael plus LaMelo.
I'm just picking a guy. But yeah, Michael plus LaMelo. LaMelo's not there either, buddy. I'm not sure about Lonzo. I'll have to check. But more importantly, and oh yeah, by the way, just a sidebar. Hey, LeBron, why don't you play center for us? No problem. Yeah, okay, I'm the best center on the roster currently. I can do that too. Now, was it as good as another time a top 5 all-time player played center for the Lakers? You know, Magic and, the finals, game 6.
Don't say that.
Probably not quite as good. But it was just close. I mean, you put them head to head. We got to look. We got to consider. No. But so I just think there is more. We're missing the milestones. We're missing the moments because we are so laser focused on the minutiae that maybe will matter. But Broussard, if the Lakers end up missing the playoffs, then yeah, or losing in the first round again, then yeah, anything LeBron accomplishes this year will feel like a consolation. But we don't know how the year's going to end. We do know what he's doing right now. And it's not 20 a game, it's 27 a game on 52%, and it feels like it's relevant.
That's fair. The other big milestone.
It's great. I'm glad you say because Nick, I'm not trying to belittle what LeBron's doing at all. No way, shape, or form. It's tremendous. I'm just saying if they don't start winning to the point where they gotta contend, maybe they get beat in the second or third round. It's not going to matter that much to us. That's all I'm saying. Okay, we'll leave that there. Hey, coming up, Tom Rinaldi will join us to remember the life of John Madden. Next on First Things First. We're back with honorary committee member Greg Jennings for the definitive ranking of NFL teams. I hope my Patriots are flying up the charts despite 2 losses. Nick, take it away.
All right, 2014 tiers because 8 teams have been eliminated, which means for the first time, one of the tiers will not include one of our preseason Super Bowl picks. Wilds picked the Seahawks. They don't even make the tiers anymore. That's what you get for picking a terrible team. Reveal the teams that barely matter. Listen, these teams are still alive, but barely. The Vikings, Steelers, and Saints all suffered terrible losses this week. They're still alive, but they don't deserve any recognition past that. Let us in. That's the next tier. These teams would just desperately like to get in the playoffs. For the Ravens, how the mighty have fallen. They were the number 1 seed. Can we show? There we go. Let us in. They were the number 1 seed a few weeks ago. On the flip side, the Dolphins, they can't stop winning, nor can the Eagles. The Eagles competition hadn't been great. Raiders and Browns, sneaky still alive for both of them. Oh, I thought the Raiders were just an awful team. Oh, that's only when they played the Chiefs. All right, my kingdom for a quarterback. Any of these 4 teams, if they just had a quarterback, might be the Super Bowl favorite. Unfortunately, none of them do. So all of them have a defined, hard, not glass ceiling, concrete ceiling, and that ceiling is the second round of the playoffs. None of these teams with their current quarterback situation can get past round 2 with the small caveat of Trey Lance, maybe, I don't know. This next group of teams is in the exact opposite position. If they only had anything but a quarterback, they might be really good. If you could combine these 2 tiers, you would have some super teams. Bengals, Chargers, Cardinals. Now, let me tell you something, America. This is why you come to the tiers. These 3 teams are going to be misranked by everyone's power rankings. They've been misranked all year. People were too far down on the Bengals. Now they have them skyrocketing up because Joe Burrow's 500 yards. Bengals are good. They're not great. Chargers have one terrible game, and now folks are acting like they're not a terrifying team. They are. Now, they might miss the playoffs, but if they get in, they're terrifying. And the Cardinals. Folks had the Cardinals. Oh, they're the best team in football. No, they're not. Oh, my God, they're going to go to the Super Bowl. No, they're not. But now people are going to act like the Cardinals are just abjectly terrible because they've been in a slump. Neither is true. They're a good, not a great team. They're going to be a dangerous first-round opponent for whomever the 4th seed in the NFC is. All right, now to the teams that are really good. Super Bowl or bust. Both of these teams, if they do anything other than reach the Super Bowl, they will feel like their season is a failure. The Bills got to the conference championship game last year, built the whole team around beating the team who beat them in the conference championship game last year, the Chiefs. They have to get a step further. And the Rams were in the divisional round last year and then traded away all their future drafts again for this year's team. If either of these teams don't end up in the final game of the year, it will feel like a failure. Unfortunately for them, the committee does not think either of them will because of the 4 teams above them. All right, truly terrifying. Both of these teams, for very different reasons, would terrify the Green Bay Packers, who we'll discuss in a minute. For the Cowboys, it's very simple. That Cowboys defense against a banged-up Packers offensive line, I think would cause real fear in Green Bay. And the Buccaneers, off reputation and memory from last season of what the Buccaneers did to the Packers, if they were to face again in Green Bay again, I think there's a little Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers flashbacks of what went bad last year. With that said, the Packers are still the number 1 contenders. The Chiefs are still the favorites. The committee does not love, Greg, how the Packers have played the last few weeks, particularly on the defensive end, letting Tyler Huntley score 30, then letting the Browns move the ball with such ease on the ground, even though Baker was trying to give the game away. But they won those games. The Chiefs, on the other hand, must have had a brilliant game this weekend because we haven't talked about them on the show at all. So the Chiefs played great. They don't make the show. So my guess is they must have played great. Since week 10, by the way, America, the Kansas City Chiefs, number 1 scoring offense, number 2 scoring defense. That will play, my friends. And if you're interested, why are you saying since week 10? Oh, that's every game they've played since the pass heard around the world. The 3rd and 10 against the Packers that changed the trajectory of the 2021 NFL season, as called by your guy, Nick Wright. Since then, the number 1 offense in the entire NFL to go along with number 2 defense. There are Week 17 tiers. Committee member emeritus Greg Jennings, what do you say?
You know, this has been an interesting year. And I like the tiers. And the reason why I like the tiers is because none of us really know where these teams are going to end up next week. We got teams that are, that are saying, let us in. They may be winning a division pending a loss by teams above them. So it's exciting, number 1. But for me, I'm going to stick to my guns. The Packers have the best record in the National Football League. They're the favorites. I love what the Chiefs are doing. I love that they have become a complete team. And I think that's why you have them at your favorites in topping this tier off. But when I look at all of what you said, truly terrifying, you're absolutely correct. The Dallas Cowboys and what they displayed this past weekend, with that defensive front, and we see what Michael Parsons is doing and what Diggs is doing in the secondary, they are a terrifying team for a team like the Green Bay Packers or anyone they may play down the stretch. But for me, the team that's most interesting and most intriguing is the Cincinnati Bengals, because they can be so electric on both sides of the ball. They can be a very complete team, and that's what this is going to be about. At the end of the day, when you look at these tiers, who's going to play complete football from these remaining 2 weeks? If the Cincinnati Bengals can play complete football for the remaining 2 weeks, they're the one team that I see moving up the tiers drastically, because they can strike fear in you offensively and they can get stops defensively as well. All the rest of the teams have a chance, but the Bengals are the team for me that I'm looking forward to seeing these last 2 weeks.
So here's the thing about the Bengals. I think the Bengals showed tremendous upside this weekend. I'm with you on that. With that said, the reason the committee is not quite as high on the Bengals as some in the moment is the Bengals are going to likely be fighting for their playoff lives in Week 18. Because this week they do play the Chiefs. And now if they beat the Chiefs, then you must take them totally seriously as a contender. I don't think they will. And if they don't, as good as it looks for them right now, they will likely be in a win and you're in, lose and you're out entirely. That's how compacted the AFC North is. And I like Joe Burrow. I love their offense. I'm not a huge fan of Zach Taylor, and I think the defense can get got. So I'm very interested to see how the Bengals respond to some real expectations now over these next couple weeks. Now we'll see. Maybe they'll go beat Kansas City. Broussard, I assume if Kansas City beats them, then folks will start deciding the Bengals are also not a very good team. But we'll see how that goes. But there, I understand Greg's point on Broussard, or on the Bengals. But I think that they're going to be fighting for their lives in the final week of the year.
All right, Nick, I'm going to focus some on your titles, your captions. All right, My Kingdom for QB. How disrespectful. Just straight up disrespectful. The Indianapolis Colts should be on the truly terrifying tier. Now, I don't think they're as good as Tampa Bay and Dallas, but that title fits them because they are a dangerous team that I don't think anybody in the AFC really wants to face with that running game and as physical as they are. And Carson Wentz, the way Frank Reich is handling him and making him just the game manager has been great. He's got 6 interceptions. That's it. All right. So don't think of Carson Wentz in Philly. This is a different one. I know he can get wild sometimes, but Frank Reich's doing a great job. New England also should be up. I don't know what tier, because I don't know that they fit any of the titles, but they should be up a tier. And Jimmy G, you just continue to disrespect him. Second round is a cap. Well, he's been to a Super Bowl, so I don't think that's a cap necessarily. If he's healthy,
he's got broken
as
thumb.
far,
what are you talking? He's not even playing. If he's healthy.
Well, no. If he gets healthy.
I mean, what are you talking about? if he's healthy, he's literally not healthy.
Now, let me move to your Super Bowl or bust. Buffalo should be in the hot and cold tier. Now, I don't mind them being, 6, 17, whatever they would be, 16. But they should be hot and cold. They're the epitome of hot and cold. They lost to Jacksonville, for goodness sake. Indianapolis beat them 41-15, for goodness sake. Against Tampa Bay, they were literally cold the first half and hot the second half. So they fit the hot and cold. So there's that. I don't have a big problem with the rest of it, but I just think some of the titles and captions aren't really fitting these clubs.
Well, not all of us were trained at the New York Times, in our writing skills. We're really just a ranking operation, and then we farm out the names and do our best. But maybe next year we will add a committee member, particularly for the writing portion of this. But we're just really into the rankings. The pros wilds is not exactly what the committee specializes in.
It's fair. I have an announcement to make. Every once in a while, someone gets nominated for a Grammy, and then something they don't like their category. Say, you know what? Take me out. I don't want the Patriots on the tiers anymore. I want us off the tiers. If you're going to put us below, I don't want us on it. You can put us in a circle by the snowflake that you could just be like, ooh, no one wants to play. And we do not want to be part of the tiers. And here's why. I get it. The knives are out. We lost 2 games in a row. Everybody wants to slice us up. The Cardinals have lost 3 in a row. 1 to the Detroit Lions. The Chargers, who the Patriots have already beaten, lost 2 in a row. 1 to the Texans in practically a blowout. To have the Patriots underneath those 2 teams that are floundering because we lost 2 sneaky close games to the Colts and the Bills. We're not showing up to the ceremony. We don't want. Yeah, we were there. It's sneaky close, not close. Close, sneaky close. That's where we're at. Sneaky close. Got to get some stops. Jonathan Taylor, Josh Allen are running. It hurts us. Sneaky close. We're not going to be on the tiers next week. We are going to be in the corner in a circle.
Well, you might not be.
Nobody wants to play.
I'll be honest with you.
That's my change.
I'll tell you this.
Yeah, we don't want to be.
Who do y'all play this week? What cupcake did the league give the Patriots to close the season as always? You got Jacksonville. I'll tell you. You know what, Wilds? Yeah. You lose to my thick-neck son, Trevor Lawrence. You're right. You won't be on the tiers. You'll be down in the muck with those teams that don't get named. I thought you'd be happy that I put you on the same tier as the Colts, even though the Colts kicked your teeth in for 55 minutes of football. But no, There's no pleasing you. You guys know, you all know that my kingdom for a quarterback tier is chef's kiss perfect. Because if any of those 4 teams had the quarterbacks
I agree.
of any of the 3 teams above them,
Greg.
they'd be the best team in football. They'd be the best team in football. If you had Burrow, Herbert, or Kyler on any of those 4 teams, the Chiefs would be worried. Instead, the Chiefs are just coasting, just hanging out, beating the Steelers 36-10 with no Travis Kelce. Tyreek basically didn't play. But no, let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about the best team in football. No. So there it is. So Wilds, you might get your wish. Trevor Lawrence comes through. I promise you,
I hope so.
Patriots, they won't be on the tiers. Don't worry about it, buddy.
I'll be honest with you. Terrible segment. I was looking forward to that. A terrible segment. Coming up later in the show. Talking Cowboys. Jerry Jones thinks Mike McCarthy deserves a good amount of credit. Nick disagrees. We'll discuss. First things first. Dallas on a 4-game winning streak. Recently clinched the NFC East. You know that. Who deserves credit for all the success? Well, Jerry Jones said, I know who, Mike McCarthy. Quote, McCarthy is the difference maker, and that needs to be recognized. Nick, do you agree?
Well, I guess it depends on, the tone of voice. It's similar to when people ask me, what's it like working with Kevin Wildes? And, depending on how the show that day went, I either say, it's unbelievable, or I say, it's unbelievable. And those are the same words, but they mean totally. So Mike McCarthy is the difference maker, and it's time people start recognizing that. As opposed to what I fear is going to happen after a botched clock situation that cost you a playoff game. So what happened in that game? Mike McCarthy is the difference maker, and I hope people recognize that. I mean, that's what my fear for the Cowboys. Because, Broussard, the Cowboys have all the ingredients of a team that could make the Super Bowl. We know that Dak can play like a top 5 quarterback. Is he a top 5 quarterback? No, not week in, week out. But he can get to that level, and he has gotten to that level, when healthy over the last few years at various times. We know when healthy, they have 2 good to very good running backs, 3 good to very good receivers, and yet offense right now is not what they do best. What they do best is get after the passer and intercept passes. Randy Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons create, I would argue, the scariest pass rushing trio in the entire NFL. And you have Trayvon Diggs just prowling the defensive backfield, going for his dozenth interception this weekend. So I think the Cowboys should be right there with the Packers as NFC favorites. But I just have this gnawing feeling in my gut that the former Packers coach in that game would help out the current Packers team by screwing something up that shouldn't be screwed up. And at some point, you got to show me that's not going to happen. By the way, to be fair here, part of me still has that fear about Andy Reid. But Andy's gotten better, and the Chiefs have overcome it enough that it's kind of more in the back of my mind. There's 4 times this year McCarthy has blatantly mismanaged the end of half or end of game situations. Now, it's only bitten them twice as far as wins and losses, but that to me is really concerning if you're trying to win 4 playoff games, what you got to do to win the Super Bowl.
All right, Nick, look, you can poo-poo Mike McCarthy and criticize him all you want because he didn't grow up playing Madden and learning clock management from a video game like you did. All right, and I get the criticisms of his clock management, okay? And the media can look at him on Hard Knocks and ridicule his spiels and his statements to the team and, his motivational tactics of, bringing monkey butt to the players, a powder and, using it to motivate them for a game. We can do all that. But at the end of the day, and we argue about this with players, with quarterbacks in particular, how much do wins matter for a quarterback? Is a mediocre quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo deserve to be celebrated because he wins? Well, with coaches, there's no debate, Nick. If a coach wins, he gets the credit because every head coach knows X's and O's. Nobody can sit here, as much as they may not like Mike McCarthy, no one can sit here and say he doesn't know football. He does. All right.
Sure.
So what it's about for head coaches is delegating to your assistants, putting them in the right positions, giving them the correct responsibilities, being a leader of men, and getting your players in that locker room to believe in you, to be together and unified, and to go out there and play hard. And look, Mike McCarthy, I thought was bad at the end of his tenure in Green Bay and deserved to get fired. We see how much better they are, and even the great Aaron Rodgers is with Matt LaFleur. I thought this was a strange, intriguing hire because why bring in Mike McCarthy to the Cowboys? And I thought it was because he would let Jerry be Jerry, all right, and wouldn't say anything. But at the end of the day, if they're winning football games, and Dan Quinn deserves tons of credit for that defense, Micah Parsons, the great players, Trayvon Diggs, all that. But Mike McCarthy has to get a lot of credit for that. I don't care, Nick, if Mike McCarthy's running errands for his wife during practice while the defensive and offensive coordinators run practice. I don't care if he's up at the concession stands ordering cotton candy during the games. If they win, then Mike McCarthy has to get a lot of credit. And if they and you know they look the part, if they somehow beat Green Bay or Tampa Bay, get to the NFC title game, much less get to the Super Bowl, then Mike McCarthy is going to have to get some credit, and he is going to deserve an apology from one Nick Wright.
That's where I'm at.
Right here on this show. Right here on this show.
So I'm gonna move that forward. Because here's the thing. A few weeks ago, Mike McCarthy made the guarantee that the Cowboys would beat Washington. And all the media members, but specifically you, Nick, you went back to your lair and you just took out your oratorical knives and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sharpen this up. Oh, if the Cowboys lose and he guaranteed it, oh boy, it's going to be a party for Nick Wright. And not only did he win that game, next thing you know, he's so deep into Washington's heads that Washington's like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to fly our benches to Dallas, yeah. And then they got rolled, not once but twice. So my point is this. I feel like McCarthy goes out there and gambles sometimes to lift his team up emotionally, like when he guaranteed that win. And I think that you need to acknowledge or perhaps apologize that perhaps his emotional leadership is better than his tactical leadership and time management. So I think you should get ahead of it and apologize now.
Well, no. I'm not going to do that. I do, and Greg Jennings was on here earlier, and Greg Jennings won a Super Bowl with McCarthy and played for him for a long time and explained some of the things McCarthy does well that we don't see, and I will believe him on that. And I will give him credit for that. I don't think he's the worst coach in football. I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's terrible at a glaringly important part of his job. But Wilds, not that long ago, we were in a similar situation where you were wondering if I was going to give a different head coach an apology. Guy I'd been awful hard on. You're like, oh, they're 7-0. When does Cliff Kingsbury get his apology? And you know what your old buddy Nick Wright said? Not anytime soon, pal. No.
Yeah,
that
got the
train
apology
is
bowl
never
coming up.
late. Unlike Mike McCarthy's clock management, that clock is always on time. Oh, when the leaves turn amber and there's a little nip in the air, a Cliff Kingsbury team falls off a cliff, and we're seeing it as we speak. McCarthy, it concerns me, because here's the problem. What he's awful at, you only have to be bad at it once, and it costs you your season. Like, it's not the minor stuff, it's the biggest stuff. And let me ask you this, Broussard, because I don't want to, even though it's kind of a nice, we've spent the day honoring John Madden, it is kind of nice to spend, this is kind of about Madden in a way, because a lot of the folks such as me that are the hardest on these coaches for clock management, It's because we grew up playing Madden and we learned clock management at a very young age. But let me ask you this. You're talking about wins and losses is how we define coaches. What about how a team looks once you leave? How much does it give you pause about McCarthy that, he had a nice run in Green Bay? And since he's been gone, Rodgers is going to win MVP 2 out of the 3 years. They're going to have a bye every year. They might be the 1 seed in back-to-back years. And at the very least, they went to 2 conference championship games. We'll see what they did this year. Like, how much does that make you revisit what he did or didn't accomplish with mostly the same roster, with the same quarterback for a team that has been sailing since he left?
No, Nick, I agree. Like I said, I thought he was bad in Green Bay. Who knows? He may have cost Aaron Rodgers a Super Bowl. So I'm with you there, but if he were calling plays in Dallas instead of Kellen Moore, then I might be more concerned. All right, but if Dallas doesn't go as far as we think they should, it may be on Mike McCarthy, but not automatically. What if Dak Prescott doesn't play well against another good team, right? I mean, that's something to look at. What if Ezekiel Elliott just doesn't run with any pop, any burst, as we've seen him most of the second half of the season? That's not all going to be on Mike McCarthy. So I'm just saying, let's see how he's not as bad a coach as you think. That's all, and maybe as the Madden heads would say. That's all the brother's saying. That's all. And get your apology ready. Start writing it out. Get it ready.